Good afternoon, it's Dr. Greg Emerson from the always beautiful Northern Rivers area of New South Wales, Australia. What seems like a triangle of sanity in an increasingly insane world. So what have I got here today? What am I drinking? Well, I'm not. This is, I drink a lot of grapefruit juice, freshly squeezed in the morning, organic ruby grapefruit juice, and of course I put most of my food scraps in my worm farm, but you can't really put grapefruit peel and grapefruit pulp in the worm farm. So what I've been doing is I have been boiling the grapefruit peel and the pulp and then fermenting it for a couple of days. And then I add worm juice from my farm and some ocean minerals from the Byron Bay area. And then I go and put it on my citrus plants. I've got lemons, limes, and ruby grapefruit growing. Because of course, what we keep doing is keep taking minerals out of our soil, expecting then our food to continue to provide us with those minerals. But you can't keep going to the bank and withdrawing $100 and depositing $3, because you're going to run out very quickly, and that's what's happening a lot with our food. So rather than throwing away food scraps, which is just going to some rubbish tip somewhere, I'm either putting it in my worm farm or I'm putting it back on the plants that I've taken the fruit from to restore those nutrients to the soil. Because we want healthy soil to have healthy plants, to have healthy people. So that's what I do with the citrus. This is a similar concept. This is with some old dried up kelp. So the fresh kelp I bring home and I dehydrate to use as kelp, and I pickle it in balsamic vinegar, the strap of the kelp cut in thin slices and roasted. But you know, sometimes on the beach and I see an old bit of kelp which was washed up hours ago and is all dried out. And even though it's resuscitatable when you get it home in some water, I just use those scraps now, all the bits that I don't want to keep. And again, I boil them, I ferment them, and then I add in the worm juice and the ocean minerals, and I make a amazing kelp mineral supplement with ocean minerals, worm juice, and the kelp nutrients to put on all the other plants. So the citrus get this one, and all the other plants. I'm growing a lot of dragon fruit, and pomegranate, and aloe vera would be the mainly other ones I go. I seem to have this affinity with cactus ever since visiting Arizona and going to Sedona and seeing those beautiful cacti spread out over this barren desert and surviving and thriving in that arid climate, and learning from some of the Apache there about how they chose their foods and how they chose what was a medicinal food. So that's going on my garden. Right, let's get into it. We've got lots of news today, got some really interesting medical stuff, and as usual, some cryptocurrency updates. Today we're going to talk about black seed oil and what it does for your heart. We're going to talk about berberine and what it does for your heart. We're going to talk about curcumin and what it does for your brain. We're going to talk about the rise of psychedelics. It appears to have kind of overtaken cannabis in the news as an emerging therapy. And we're going to talk about some cryptocurrency updates. So if you're interested in any of that, if you're interested in keeping a healthy brain, a healthy heart, a healthy mental system, and moving outside financial systems, because we don't like the one that we're currently in with the insane amount of money printing, keep watching. All right, so first up is black seed oil. Black seed oil is the oil from the Nigella sativa seed. The Prophet Muhammad, of course, famous quote, said it was the cure for everything except for death. I'm not sure about that, but it sure tastes bad. But let's have a look at what the studies are showing. So this is a study from the June the 4th, 2020 Antioxidants Journal, which looks at black seed oil in... Oh, actually, this one's actually not about your heart. This one's actually about black seed oil possibly helping us to lose weight by converting white fat to brown fat. Remember, the white fat is where we store all our fat. Brown fat is the fat which is full of mitochondria, which produce our energy. And they actually burn nutrients. They don't store nutrients. It's brown fat which produces heat and energy for us. So we want to have We want to cut down on the white fat storage and increase the brown fat storage, because brown fat burns energy for us. One way of getting brown fat, of course, is through cold thermogenesis, and my cold thermogenesis weekly trips are starting again, which I combine with yoga and breath work, as well as the cold thermogenesis training for people interested in that. Because when we get cold, we start converting white fat to brown fat, and people have been looking at other ways that we can convert white fat to brown fat, so it helps with weight loss. And so this study was looking at the use of black seed oil for that purpose. The other fat to remember is beige fat. So there's really three fats: there's white fat, beige fat, and brown fat. And really the way to think about beige fat is it's just white fat on its way to becoming brown. The brown fat is brown because it's full of mitochondria. So as we start converting the white fat to brown fat, it goes through a beige stage. So let's have a look at the study. It says excessive lipid accumulation in white fat results in adipocyte are fat cells, hypertrophy. Hypertrophy means getting bigger. So it says what it's saying is excessive fat accumulation in white fat results in enlarged fat cells. We don't get more fat cells. We got as many fat cells as we were born with. They either get bigger or smaller, but they don't change in number. Excessive fat accumulation in white fat results in enlarging of the fat cells and chronic low-grade inflammation, which is the major cause of obesity-associated insulin resistance and consequent metabolic disease. Insulin resistance is where we need to produce more and more insulin to get the same result achieved. The same level of blood glucose that we need to stay safe. We need to produce more and more insulin because the cells aren't responding to it as well. So we're basically shouting at our cells to take in the glucose and get it out of our bloodstream. So with insulin resistance, we have to start producing more and more insulin until we get to a stage, if we ignore all the warning signs, we get to a stage where we can no longer produce enough insulin, and therefore our blood sugar starts to go up. That's compared to type 1 diabetes, where our pancreas gets completely dysfunctional and really produces only very, very small amounts of insulin. So in type 2 diabetes, our pancreas produces a lot of insulin, but it's not working anymore. Type 1 diabetes, pancreas not producing any insulin, which is why those people often have to go on insulin. But type 2 diabetes, we can often get away with it without using insulin. The development of beige adipocytes in white fat, called browning of white fat, increases energy expenditure because the beige fat and the brown fat burn energy, and has been considered as a novel strategy to counteract obesity. Well, it's not novel when you come on my cold thermogenesis trips, because that's why we're getting in cold water, because we want our white fat to become brown fat. Our data demonstrate the enhanced browning of white fat from black seed oil in combination with omega-3s. So black seed oil does have some omega-3s, but if we're combining it with healthy seafood in our diet, that's an amazing combination of the black seed oil and the seafood to help produce more brown fat. Our data demonstrate the enhanced browning of white fat from black seed oil in combination with omega-3, which may play an important role in decreasing obesity-associated insulin resistance and in reducing the chronic inflammatory state of obesity. So if it was me, and it is me, because I do both these, I'm in the cold all the time, in the cold water, I am having black seed oil, and I'm consuming seafood. It's my favorite kind of animal protein to consume. Next one on black seed oil. Published June, that's how up to date we are, June 2020, my friends. Keeping up to date. Effective, that's June 2020 edition of Phytotherapy Research, effective Nigella sativa oil supplement on risk factors for cardiovascular diseases in patients with type 2 diabetes. The study aimed to evaluate the effects of Nigella sativa oil on serum level of systemic inflammation, because we know ultimately that cardiovascular disease is a disease of inflammation. It's the arteries which get inflamed and then our body responds to the inflammation. So the goal with management of cardiovascular disease is to find out what is causing the inflammation and get rid of it. If you keep falling on your knee and your knee gets a scab on it, keeps getting inflamed, you've got to work out that it's because you're falling on the knee, because if you keep falling on the knee, the inflammation is not going to go away and the scab's going to keep forming. I got distracted again. The study aimed to evaluate the effects of black seed oil on serum level of systemic inflammation, oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is production of excessive free radicals, fasting blood glucose and lipid profile in patients with type 2 diabetes. And the results, they concluded that Nigella sativa oil, aka black seed oil, supplement has cardiovascular protective effects in patients with type 2 diabetes by improving the lipid profile and blood sugar control by reducing the C-reactive protein and the lipid perioxidation. C-reactive protein is a level of is a measure of inflammation. So it says, yes, we know the inflammation is going down because our test of inflammation, the C-reactive protein is going down, and the lipid perioxidation, which is basically the damage to fat cells caused by the inflammation. So black seed oil has cardiovascular protective effects. It protects our cardiovascular system. Remember, it's not heart disease, it's cardiovascular system. It's a systemic disease of our blood vessels. Your heart's one of them, but it also affects our brain as well. You don't want to save your heart attack, but you end up with a stroke. By reducing the C-reactive protein, so it reduces the inflammation and the lipid perioxidation, the damage to the fat cells. All right, let's go on. Let's have a look at curcumin, the active ingredient from turmeric. Again, I'm a fan of the entourage effect. I don't want to take curcumin, I don't want to take one ingredient out of a magical substance like turmeric. So I'm a big fan of turmeric. I dehydrate a whole lot of my own organic mullumbimby. That's an area in northern New South Wales, not far from Byron Bay. Turmeric, which I'm using in a lot of my products that I'm developing, which will be available soon. So this was a study published in the June 2020 journal Nutrients, and it says further evidence of benefits to mood and working memory from lipidated curcumin in healthy older people. A 12-week double-blind placebo-controlled partial replication study. So what that meant was the lipidated curcumin, it means that curcumin's not particularly well absorbed by the body, so they put the curcumin in fat cells so the fat's absorbed, and then when the fat's digested, it releases the curcumin. What I do is I just make sure that whenever I'm eating turmeric, and of course when people would traditionally eat turmeric, it would usually be with ghee and things like that in their meals to get the fat, and I use it in my products, and I've usually got ghee in the products as well. So I'm basically, even though I'm not spending a fortune on lipidated curcumin, I am ingesting my turmeric with ghee or coconut oil so that it's happening naturally. Let's have a look at what happened to healthy older people when they started to have some curcumin. Study says curcumin, brackets, a flavonoid isolated from turmeric, affects several processes involved in neurocognitive aging. We have previously reported that short-term, 4 weeks administration of a highly bioavailable curcumin preparation improved working memory and reduced fatigue and stress reactivity in a healthy older cohort. These results confirm that the curcumin improves aspects of mood and working memory in a healthy older cohort. Well, mood and memory are very important. We're in the middle of an epidemic of neurodegenerative diseases. Alzheimer's is one of them, but there's a lot of other ones as well. The pattern of results is consistent with improvements in hippocampal, it's part of the brain, function, and may hold promise for alleviating cognitive decline in some populations. Are we going to wait for this more tests to be done? No, we're going to eat some turmeric and some ghee. All right, next, let's have a look at berberine. So berberine is an extract from the roots of several plants, including the Berber plant, where it gets its names from. And the amount of research on berberine is extraordinary. It's traditionally used for diabetes, but it's also had a lot of research recently on its benefit to the lungs, particularly in avoiding inflammation in the lungs. And now we're doing more research with berberine in cardiovascular disease. So let's have a look at this study. This study was reported on Newswire that I'm reading it from. And it says, taking extra measures to better care for heart health may also be made through the use of some natural remedies like berberine. Multiple previous studies have shown that this natural healing remedy has powerful therapeutic benefits. Today, it is even widely consumed via supplementation for preventative health processes. According to studies, Berberine has shown promise in working and improving multiple aspects of cardiovascular health. It has been found to potentially aid in conditions like heart attacks, enlarged hearts, and arrhythmias. Arrhythmias is different heart rhythms, abnormal heart rhythms like atrial fibrillation. What made it even more special is that it decreases plaque formation in the arteries. The plaque is the scab. I said you keep falling on your knee and you'll keep getting a scab on your knee. The key is to stop falling on your knee. It worked not just by decreasing foam cell formation. Foam cells are what we call when the cholesterol gets deposited in the inflamed wall of the artery. The cholesterol is deposited there to try and heal the inflammation in the artery. But eventually, because the inflammation continues, we don't stop damaging the wall of the artery, then that cholesterol becomes inflamed, and then white cells come along and then try and get rid of that inflamed cholesterol by ingesting it. And when a white cell ingests that damaged cholesterol, it's then called a foam cell. It worked not just by decreasing foam cell formation. That's almost certainly because it's decreasing foam cell formation because it's addressing the underlying inflammation of the artery. Therefore, you're not getting damaged cholesterol. Therefore, you're not getting white cells consume that damaged cholesterol. But also preventing the plaque from breaking off. So, not all heart attacks, but many of them are caused by a little bit of that plaque breaking off, or by that plaque breaking off, which is then like picking off a bit of the scab. What happens when you pick off a scab? You get a blood clot forming, so it doesn't bleed if you pick it off prematurely. And when that blood clot forms, of course, that blood clot then breaks off and goes on, you get a heart attack. Scientists further found it has been able to reduce inflammation. I said that. It works by reducing the inflammation of the blood vessels and oxidative stress. This natural remedy could be extremely beneficial for a range of medicinal purposes. If you want to look it up, it's Berberine, it's spelled B-E-R-B-E-R-I-N-E. When it comes to cardiovascular health, it has been found to improve injured heart muscle cells after a stroke. Again, that's just saying what I was saying. A stroke is a problem with the brain. Why are we talking about the heart? Well, because cardiovascular disease, that's heart and all the blood vessels, and your blood vessels supply your brain as well. On top of all these, studies have shown berberine can increase overall quality of life. That's always good. It even shows great potential in reducing death rates in individuals with congestive heart failure. Let's have a look at zinc and viruses. I've talked a lot about... I'm thirsty. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to drink the cup. I'm not that thirsty. Talked a lot about zinc being a critical part of our immune system, one of the roadblocks, particularly with viruses. Zinc is also really important for growth, skin health, immune function, mood, because it's involved in the production of serotonin and other neurotransmitters in the brain. But now, of course, all the interest is about zinc and viral disease. So let's have a look at this study, May 2020, in Medical Hypothesis, potential role of zinc supplementation in prophylaxis, that's prevention, and treatment of a virus we're all dealing with at the moment. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter with zinc. Don't need to, with the beauty about using zinc is you don't need to find drugs a specific drug which works on a specific virus. This is about what works on my whole immune system. So, because I'm surrounded currently by 1 trillion viruses, if I'm going to find a drug for each different virus, I'm going to need 1 trillion drugs. Well, that's not a very good strategy. So I want to find things that I can do which improves the whole of my immune system. So let's have a look at what they say about zinc. It is well known that zinc possesses a variety of direct and indirect antiviral properties. That means zinc directly kills viruses, but it also has indirect effects by boosting the immune system, which are realized through different mechanisms. Administration of zinc supplement, of course I get mine from oysters, has a potential to enhance antiviral immunity. 6 oysters has about 50 milligrams of zinc in it. Administration of zinc supplement has a potential to enhance antiviral immunity, so it boosts our immune system, both innate and humoral, and to restore, that means it both works on T cells and on B cells. which is the two main cells of our immune system. One to produce antibodies. So B cells produce antibodies, which then label antigens next time, so we can recognize them as a foe very quickly. And T cells either are special forces or the Air Force. Special force T cells direct hand-to-hand combat to kill these microbes, whereas the other T cells are like the Air Force, they just drop indiscriminate bombs. And restore depleted immune cell function or to improve normal immune cell function. So it basically turbocharges the immune system and makes it work optimally. In particular, in immunocompromised or elderly patients. Zinc may also act in a synergistic manner when co-administered with a standard antiviral therapy. So if you're going to, what they're saying is if you're going to be on antiviral therapy, antiviral drugs, then zinc will make them work better. Okay, we're up to psychedelics, then on to cryptocurrencies. What's happening in the world of psychedelics? Well, you know, it may be financial, maybe investment purposes, I'm not going to say that, but the interest is rapidly turning to psychedelics. The news on medicinal cannabis is dropping off as the news on psychedelics increase. In fact, I'm reading it daily, I feel like I'm back in the 60s. Free love, revolution, great music. Right, what are we saying about the article is in Forbes, Why the Future of Mental Health Care May Lie in Psychedelics. And it says, unlike medical cannabis, which is still navigating a litany of federal research restrictions, psychedelic substances, including ketamine, psilocybin is the one from magic mushrooms, and ibogaine. Ibogaine's a next level psychedelic that you have to be very brave to look into, have been granted FDA approval for clinical trials. In fact, in 2018 and 2019, the FDA designated psilocybin, the psychoactive compound found in mushrooms, as a, quote, breakthrough therapy, unquote, to treat clinical depression. This coveted classification allows the developers of the drug, it's a mushroom, not a drug, to conduct clinical trials with more regulatory support and fast track the development and review of final treatments. So really fascinating interest and fascinating research into the world of psychedelics. And we read some of the articles I've written, you'll know that perhaps if you look at the stoned ape therapy, that mushrooms, particularly magic mushrooms, may have been, certainly with the stoned ape therapy, one of the things which actually helped us by developing new neural pathways, helped us accelerate our evolution as a species by not only by working synergistically with omega-3s from seafood, which allowed the expansion of our brain, cooking, which allowed the shrinking of our gut and the expansion of our brain, and the mushrooms, which allowed new neural pathways to form in that enlarging brain. Okay, and finally, we're on to cryptocurrencies. Just some quick news on that. Australia and New Zealand now have machines which dispense soft drinks, which accept Bitcoin. Over 2,000 vending machines in Australia and New Zealand have started accepting Bitcoin thanks to an agreement between Coca-Cola Amatil and Centrapay. So, I mean, what we want with cryptocurrencies is for them to become much easier to use on a day-to-day basis. That is coming, but it's nice to see we're making some inroads in that now. So that's positive for adoption, that we'll be able to use a card now with our cryptocurrencies to buy goods very easily. What other news on cryptocurrencies? German stock exchange will list Bitcoin ETP. This is published in just the last couple of days. London-based ETC Group will list the first crypto exchange traded product on Germany's extra digital stock exchange this month. I don't think I'm pronouncing that properly. The German stock exchange will now have Bitcoin on it. Which that's incredible news. I mean, now this is a stock exchange recognizing Bitcoin as an investment. Traders in the United Kingdom, Italy and Austria will also be able to deal in shares of the new product. So you can buy shares in the Bitcoin product. BTCE tracks the price of Bitcoin and is physically backed by the cryptocurrency. So this is not, you're not buying exchange traded funds, you're not buying something which resembles ownership in Bitcoin. If you're buying this fund, it has to have, if it says it's got 1,000 Bitcoin in it and you're buying some of them, it's got to own 1,000 Bitcoin. You're not buying airy-fairy imaginary Bitcoin. BTCE tracks the price of Bitcoin and is physically backed by the cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin will be held in cold storage by digital asset custodian BitGo. So this is Bitcoin, which is locked in a bank, in a hard wallet where you store your cryptocurrency, and it's there for people to buy some of. Just making it easier, I suppose, for people to buy, and people who usually buy through stock exchanges rather than buying through cryptocurrency exchanges. So that's great news. The easier we can make it for people to adopt and invest in these cryptocurrencies, the better it's going to be. And finally, big news written in Bloomberg that Fidelity says a third of big institutions own crypto assets. So this is happening fairly subtly without much fanfare, but we're seeing big institutions slowly on the quiet start accumulating cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin. You know, first the crazy anarchists get into these new things, and then along come the institutions before the public get in. But the institutions are often doing it quietly, because if you make a big noise, suddenly the price will go up. So generally they'll do it quietly so they can accumulate some before the price goes up. About a third of large institutional investors own digital assets such as Bitcoin, according to a survey from Fidelity Investments. A third of large institutional investors. Across the US and Europe, 36% of the survey's 774 respondents said they own cryptocurrencies or derivatives. In the US, 27% of institutions, so a bigger uptake in Europe at the moment, including pension funds, family offices, investment advisors, and digital and traditional hedge funds, said they own digital assets, up from 22% about a year ago. So we're seeing a rapid escalation in the adoption of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which is great news, because this provides us an alternative investment and monetary and currency system to the existing one, which appears to be focused primarily on printing extraordinary amounts of money at the moment. So if you like what you've heard today, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The Treat the Cause Clinic has been shut down, but lives on now as the podcast. So you can either watch this on YouTube if you are, give it a like, or you listen on a podcast on most podcast platforms. If you like what you've heard, like and subscribe on YouTube, and give me hopefully a kind review, because we're all about love and kindness. Ultimately, that's where we want the world to go. Love, kindness and compassion. It's where the future lies, hopefully. So give a like on YouTube, subscribe, kind review on any Apple Podcasts, which would be good. If you want to follow me, if you want to know what I'm doing about my health, about how I'm using this information to stay optimally healthy. If you want to know how I recently went from a weight of 108.7 kilos down to 94.8, which is about 14 kilos in about 35 days, without fatigue, without brain fog, without a drop off in the rate of weight loss. I wrote about all this on my Patreon page, where you can also support me in my work. That's www.patreon.com/Dr. Greg Emerson. Otherwise, I'll see you next week with more of the latest updates on health, what I'm doing to try and minimize my impact on the world, tread lightly, and the emerging world of cryptocurrencies. See you next time. Peace and love.